You know, for almost 3 decades, this thing was the future. A stunning piece of engineering that flew faster than the planet spins. It turned a 7-hour slog across the Atlantic into a 3.5-hour party. And then, just like that, it was gone. Now, most people think they know why it disappeared, but the story you've heard, that's not even close to the full picture.
Right, this is the image that's burned into everyone's memory. Air France Flight 4590, a horrifying fireball that claimed 113 lives and seemed to destroy Concorde's perfect reputation in less than 2 minutes. And yeah, the standard story is that this one tragic event was the nail in the coffin.
But that's where everybody gets it wrong. See, that crash wasn't the cause of Concorde's death. It was the final, fatal symptom of a deep-seated problem that had been festering for decades. The truth is, Concorde's fall isn't a story about a freak accident. It's a story about a hidden pattern of risk, a pattern that was known, documented, and tragically ignored.
But hey, before we get into the failure, you've really got to appreciate the triumph. Because let's be clear, Concorde was an absolute masterpiece. It wasn't just another plane, it was a statement about what humans could achieve.
I mean, the ambition here was just off the charts. We're talking Mach 2, over 1,300 miles an hour. It flew so high at 60,000 feet that you could literally see the curve of the Earth against the blackness of space. Its design was like something out of science fiction, from that beautiful delta wing to the famous droop snoot nose that tilted down so the pilots could actually see the runway. This was it, the absolute peak of speed and luxury.
Okay, but here's the part of the story nobody talks about. Underneath that sleek, futuristic shell was a known, repeating weakness. The idea that Concorde had a perfect safety record before the year 2000? That's a complete myth. The reality is a secret history of close calls that pointed directly to the disaster that was coming.
57. Let that number sink in. That is how many times a Concorde blew a tire before the fatal crash in Paris. This was not a new problem. It was a well-known pattern. See, this thing had to take off at insane speeds, around 200 knots, way faster than a normal jetliner, and that put a tremendous amount of stress on its tires.
And this wasn't just some abstract statistic, it was a full-on dress rehearsal for disaster. The exact same failure that destroyed Flight 4590 happened 21 years earlier. In 1979, a Concorde leaving Washington, D.C. blew a tire. Debris was flung upwards, punctured the wing, hit a fuel tank, and damaged critical systems. Sound familiar? It wasn't some secret either. It kicked off a huge investigation.
And here it is, the chilling, crucial conclusion from that investigation. They acknowledged the risk, but officially decided the chance of a catastrophic fire was very small. That one assumption, that single miscalculation of a known risk, basically set the stage for everything that happened 2 decades later. The warning was there, in black and white. It just wasn't taken seriously enough.
So let's go to that day, July 25th, 2000, and watch how this ignored pattern finally played out. This is where a tiny piece of bad luck collides with a massive systemic vulnerability.
The trigger itself was almost ridiculously mundane. A small metal strip, not even 2 feet long, that had fallen off a totally different plane, a Continental DC-10, that took off just a few minutes earlier. Just a stray piece of junk, sitting on the runway, waiting for the one plane in the world it could bring down.
And what happens next is an immediate, unstoppable chain reaction. The metal strip shreds a tire. A huge 4.5-kilo chunk of rubber slams into the wing. Now, it doesn't punch a hole from the outside. No, it creates a massive pressure wave inside the full fuel tank, which ruptures it from within. Fuel gushes out, finds a spark from severed wires in the landing gear, and the whole thing goes up in flames. That inferno gets sucked into the engines, and they choke out. A total system failure, all in a matter of seconds.
And here's the truly awful part. The tire exploded just after the plane had passed V1. That's the point of no return on a runway. Once you're past V1, you are committed. You have to take off. The crew had no good options. Slam on the brakes, you risk a massive crash on the runway. Keep going, and you're trying to fly a burning, crippled jet with only half its power. They were completely and utterly trapped.
But even this horrific catastrophe isn't the whole story. Not even close. The crash exposed Concorde's technical flaw, sure, but the plane was already flying on borrowed time for completely different reasons. These were the unspoken truths that made its survival an economic impossibility.
Just look at this. This one chart explains everything about why Concorde was fundamentally doomed from the start. It could carry, at most, 100 people. A Boeing 747, its contemporary, could carry 400.
You just can't win when your competitor can spread their costs across 4 times as many tickets. The math never worked.
And that was just the beginning. The sonic booms were so powerful it was banned from flying supersonic over land, which killed off countless profitable routes. It was a notorious gas guzzler. Tickets were insanely expensive, and because only 20 were ever built, there was zero economies of scale. Getting spare parts was a nightmare. It was a beautiful boutique operation trying to survive in a mass-market world.
So when you put it all together, the hidden technical patterns and the broken economic model, you get the real lesson of Concorde. And it's a lesson that's way more important than just a story about one plane crash.
So, let's just lay it out. On one side, you have the common myth. A beautiful dream ended by a 1 in a million freak accident. But on the other, you have the insider's view, the one you have now. A known, unaddressed flaw finally caused a disaster within a system that was already completely unsustainable.
Think of it this way. The crash in 2000, and later the 9/11 attacks, which crushed the airline industry, they didn't kill Concorde. They were just the events that finally forced everyone to admit that the patient was already on life support. They made the inevitable impossible to ignore.
And that leaves us with a really powerful idea, right? The story of Concorde is a lesson in seeing past the shiny exterior to find the hidden patterns of risk underneath. So the real question to take away from all this is, what modern marvels are we all celebrating today while ignoring the small repeated warnings that point to a much bigger problem? Once you start looking for that pattern, trust me, you'll start seeing it everywhere.